Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dumelang, sanibonani, molweni. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Language Awareness Week. And today we are at Mahikeng campus. Give it up for Mahikeng campus, everybody. Today, I just want to welcome you to a colloquium that we will be discussing the theme, Multilingualism, a powerful resource for inclusion and academic development. Today, we have taken our time outside the Language Awareness Week activities to come and have a colloquium as we are in an academic institution. To us, a colloquium means time of talking, time of coming up with ideas, time of sharing ideas so that together we can come up with workable solutions that are going to make multilingualism fashionable. I always say this week is all about reigniting the passion for our African languages, making our African languages fashionable. That it's cool to speak Setswana, it's cool to speak English, it's cool to speak African languages without being ashamed of it. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to welcome you all, the audiences in Vanderbijlpark campus, the audiences in Potchefstroom campus, and the audiences in Mahikeng campus that are watching us live on YouTube and that are watching us live in all the student centers. Thank you so much for joining us for this colloquium. Without any waste of time, I would like to give it to Prof. Sonia Swanepoel to do an official welcoming to all the attendees of this colloquium. Over to you, Prof.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dumelang, specifically to our students. Goeiemiddag. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to welcome a few people specifically. That is also our panelist, Professor Langa Khumalo, Dr. Malepole Sefotu, Dr. Simbai Yafela, Mrs. Nombulela Mbolekwa Sonakile. And then in addition also Professor Nkamta from the Faculty of Humanities as well as Professor Huwe from the Faculty of Humanities. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, I'm not sure if you're aware that we approved the Northwest University language policy on the 23rd of June of 2022. So this policy is brand new. It is hardly off the shelf. And as we know that students and academic staff are over-inundated with information, I was wondering if you are aware of this policy. But I'm not going to go through it. I'm just going to highlight one or two pointers for you. Why do you think we started with a language policy at Northwest University and take into consideration all the court cases that we had in South Africa because certain universities decided that they will only be using a single language. And we, as a community of scholars, decided not to do that. So in our language policy, we say that the whole idea of this policy is to deepen engagement with multilingualism at Northwest University. And we're going to do that by seeking to ensure the development of universities' languages of choice in a manner that is functionally multilingual and inclusive. So our language policy will never be to exclude anybody, neither staff or students, but we want to emphasize the inclusivity of it. Each faculty or department must then, therefore, establish and compile their own language plans. And then obviously the UMC, who's the top management of the University Management Committee, is then responsible to make sure that these language plans are executed. And then obviously the governance is with council. So ladies and gentlemen, it is so important that we take some time off in our busy schedules to engage with this brand new policy. And we do have certain principles. When we established and compiled this language policy that we need to adhere to. And one of them, we can't go through all of them, but one of them is what is the prescriptions of our professional bodies. We have got certain professional bodies that's got certain language specifications, and we need to adhere to that. So that's also a principle that we will look at statutory bodies. And then also we have the principle of the provision of flagship African language program development. So those languages that we decided upon, that we will really put in resources and academic scholarship to make sure that we develop those languages. So I think without any further ado, I'm sure that you're looking forward to an exciting afternoon. I must apologize that I'm attending a council meeting, so I need to run. I just left the council meeting and I was saying I'm going to LAW at the FLAAW. And they were thinking, what is this woman saying? It's the Language Awareness Week at the Faculty of Law. We live in acronyms. But lastly, I need to say that in this policy, I don't know if you're aware, we've also got a language ombud. Yeah. So what this person is where you've got any challenges with the language, that is your go-to person. So from my side, let me say thank you very much for attending, whether it's virtually or in person, and let us really have meaningful and productive and fruitful discussions this afternoon. Thank you. Keep well.
Thank you so much, Prof. Sonia. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I love the fact that Prof. Sonia has engaged in our language policy. We revised our language policy this year. And of course, one of the distinct features of our language policy is that it aims to facilitate multilingualism. I can proudly say, Prof. Langa, without any doubt, that we are the only university that is having 4 official languages. And that is a proud step that I say boldly everywhere I go. Most universities go for bilingualism, but we are for multilingualism, meaning we have Afrikaans, Setswana, Sesotho, and English as our languages of teaching and learning, which gives us more work to re-intellectualize Setswana and Sesotho. I deliberately not say intellectualize, but I'm saying re-intellectualize for a reason and for a purpose, because people have went step ahead of us to intellectualize. Now what is needed is to re-intellectualize, making it available to our young people, making it available out there, all the terminologies and all the work that is being done. Thank you so much. I just want to outline the purpose of the day for us. We have gathered here to have a colloquium, to talk, to have a discussion about the topic at hand. Is really multilingualism a powerful resource? Somebody asked me this week. And this person also went to say, how does multilingualism facilitate inclusion and academic development? Can you tell me practical things that are happening at the NWU or any other institutions of higher learning that we can see, that we can point out that indeed here, multilingualism is being used as a resource. I always make it a point that multilingualism should be used as a resource, not as a divider, but it should be used as a resource to facilitate access and inclusion. And this is the topic at hand that my panelists would be talking about. I can safely say, I really worked hard. We worked hard as a team. And I'm proud of the Mahican team. Give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. They worked day in and day out without fail to make sure that we have a successful colloquium and we have successful events. And the Van der Bijl Park team also, give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. They worked hard in the Potchefstroom. I always say we are one Northwest University, different campuses, but one Northwest University. And unity is our strength. And I want to introduce my panel before I let them talk on each and every question that I'll be posing to them. On my left, I have Ms. Mbolekwa Sonakile from Pensalb. We are working closely with Pensalb, and we are excited that Pensalb is supporting higher institutions of learning to make sure that multilingualism is a reality, not just on paper, but it is a reality in implementation. I also want to introduce Prof. Langa Kumalo, the Executive Director of SADiLaR. The Executive Director of SADiLaR. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. This is I always say he is our voice of reason in our Senate meetings when we're having discussions and we're having disagreements on certain matters on policy. He's the one who will say, okay, with a cool voice, okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is how we should approach it. So he's our voice of reason. And I want to introduce to us Dr. Yafele from UJ. Wow, interesting that UJ is here to join us in this colloquium. A round of applause. Round of applause. And I also have Dr. Sefutu, who's also here at the Mahikeng campus and a lecturer here. A round of applause in the English department. Round of applause for my panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have an interesting discussion. And later on, I'm going to give you an opportunity to pose questions to our panelists. Interesting, eh? So I don't think I have a roving mic. Do I have a roving mic for myself? Okay. We're getting right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, as you have seen, our theme for Law Week says, multilingualism, a powerful resource for inclusion and academic development. Prof. Langa, can you just outline to us what is the role of multilingualism in institutions of higher learning?
Thank you very much, Dr. Kia Sashoka, for not just putting together this very important Language Awareness Week, but for inviting me to be one of your panelists. And I won't waste time because I know we're pressed for time. Multilingualism derives itself from the Constitution of the Republic. So it's not something that universities are doing as a favor to punt and implement. It is something that derives from the Constitution, and that's how vitally important that clause is to our Constitution, to our various institutions in the country. Multilingualism also is expressed in various instruments that have been passed by the country. You will recall the Use of Official Languages Act of 2012, which strengthened the use of African languages in all our institutions. And so multilingualism again finds expression in that act. The new framework for higher education institutions is another instrument that actually very clearly states that higher education institutions must embrace multilingualism in the teaching and learning and research and administration. So there is no sector that is spared in the advancement of multilingualism at our universities. Why do we need to do that? It is because through multilingualism, we affirm all our students, all our lecturers, we affirm the cultures that make up the Rainbow Nation. Because through these languages, we express our culture, we express our history, we express our ideas, we even invent in those languages. So to actually preclude languages from certain areas of function is actually stifling that very important innovative ability in our students, in our lecturers. So multilingualism in that sense, therefore, recognizes mother tongue speakers. It recognizes mother tongue from just being confined to ritualistic functions at home and in churches, to actually being languages that are fully intellectualized. And I like the fact that you used re-intellectualization, because our languages have been functioning in very complex spaces. And it's just that we are expanding those spaces to include academia. But they are not unintellectualized. we are expanding the intellectualization of African languages to include the academy, to include research, innovation, science, technology, and administration. And I want to emphasize administration, Dr. Sashoka, because various sectors, especially in the support sector of our universities, think that they do not have anything to do with language policies. But if you want to evaluate competence in someone who has very limited vocabulary in the English language or in the Afrikaans language, and you are actually, as an employer, looking for the ability of that person to actually assess them on the basis of how they did the interview in English, is actually denying the talent that those people bring to the workspace. So if they want to actually interview in Setswana, let them interview in Setswana, because what you're looking at is not their competencies in English language. You're looking at their competencies in the job. So the support sectors of our universities are not spared in the implementation of multilingualism at our universities. So the ultimate objective, because it happens in higher education institutions, is to actually grapple with what has been the bane of higher education, access and success. So do we find our universities accessible to everyone who wants to access them? So when you walk into a citadel such as this one, and you find the language is English, and you are from Bila Bila, do you find it accessible? If you don't find anything that identifies you from home coming into such a citadel of an institution, it is so empowering if when you walk into that institution, you find welcome in Setswana. You find a lecturer saying, welcome to my module in Setswana. You feel like you belong. I hate the word inclusivity, actually. We're moving away from inclusivity, because inclusivity means that the power resides in somebody else. Somebody has to welcome you, bring you in, to include you. No, we belong to these institutions. We belong to this country. We belong in every space, every innovative space in this country. So the sense of belonging is when you find yourself affirmed in the school, affirmed in the college, in the faculty, whatever it is that you're functioning, you need to find yourself belonging into that space, because then we actually can unlock your creative potential. Because that's what universities need to do, to unlock your creative potential, your wit, your witticism. That's what we're after. So universities, in that sense, when they embrace multilingualism, they actually improve access. They improve access to their institutions. And they improve success. Because when students can access the various pedagogies in the languages that they can dream about, that they can speak, that they can innovate in, then the pedagogies become less inaccessible. You know, because, I mean, we will talk about the question of dumbing down higher education. The association of science, of knowledge to African languages is that African languages threaten this science, threaten epistemologies, because they're dumbing down. You're bringing in a village register to come into a space where we're supposed to be using an academic register. Okay, African languages can be academic registers. All the official languages can be academic registers. So in that sense, therefore, multilingualism is a tool, is an aid towards improving access and success, which is the bane of higher education, because you know that our throughput rates are very, very low. The attrition rate is very, very low in higher education, and you need for every affordancy to improve that access and success in our higher education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Langa. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause. I love what you've been saying, that multilingualism is a resource. However, it is a tool. You know, I love that we should see multilingualism as a tool rather than something that is a problem. I see it that when we go to faculties, it's a struggle to identify, to make sure that they understand that it's a tool for academic development. Thank you for bringing that in. And in higher institutions of learning, Dr. Yafele, do you think that is multilingualism beneficial in institutions of higher learning, or is it not beneficial?
Thank you. just to maybe to begin with, I'd like to agree with Prof that, multilingualism gives access, and in the end, it leads to success in educational spaces. At UJ, we have got a very diverse student populations. It's in an urban area, and therefore you can imagine that our students are coming from all over South Africa, and also we've got quite a percentage of students who are international as well. And so we need to be inclusive in how we cater for these students. We need to acknowledge their identities, their cultures, their languages, and to say what are students bringing in to the classroom, and can we harness those resources, their linguistic resources, for educational purposes, which is what I've been trying with my colleagues at UJ to do. And I would say, indeed, yes, multilingualism does have concrete benefits for our students. In fact, research has shown over the last 30 years or so that, from bilingualism, multilingualism, and now people start talking of translanguaging. All these where students use their indigenous languages to access academic discourses and in the end succeed, academically. I would maybe want to give concrete examples from our own institutions where we have, successfully used multilingualism to promote academic literacy. I've been involved in one project in which we used, translanguaging for academic reading. And what we were modeling to our students is that you can actually have conversations with an academic text in your own language. And we were trying to validate the students' languages and to say your languages are important, and we include them in academics. And so in this academic reading project, for example, we have students maybe who share the same languages, working together. But I must hasten to say that right now many students are are not only bilingual, but they're multilingual, and they speak more than 3-4 languages. And you'll be surprised that a Tswana student has got a bit of isiZulu that they understand. And therefore, if you group them and they do collaborative work using their languages, you'll be surprised at how much this is productive. And in the end, what we do is in discussions, they collaborate using their languages in group work, and you give them some tasks. And then, obviously, at the end, and in the end, what happens is that they are able to digest the material, to process the material. And they are not only mimicking and, like puppets, and copying and pasting and plagiarizing information that they don't understand, and just regurgitating information, but they're actually processing it, and in the end, they become academics in the end. And so in the end, what we do, after doing these tasks in which they use their languages, they've got conversations amongst themselves in their languages, they've got conversations with academic texts, then they've absorbed, digested the information. And when you ask them to write them, even in English, their English has also improved. And so when we do ask them to write, obviously we test in English at the end. We're still testing in English. We'll find that, they are doing much, much better. And we've done some empirical studies where we compare students who just receive, a monolingual diet as usual, and those who are actually using multiple languages in discussion, and the results clearly show that those who were engaged in multilingualism had an edge over the students who were just, exposed to to traditional monolingualism. So yes, indeed, it has concrete benefits, and we have got, we've tried it and it works.
Thank you so much. A round of applause to Dr. Yafele. Indeed, Dr. Yafele says multilingualism is beneficial. It gives access. It makes a student understand content more in different kind of thinking and patterns of thinking. And my question now would be, is multilingualism, Dr. Sefoto, a resource in institutions of higher learning? Can we say, and how do we justify, can we safely say multilingualism is a resource in institutions of higher learning? Is it a resource?
Thank you very much, Dr. Okay, I forgot that I have this in my hand. It's on already. Thank you very much, Doctor. To answer your question, I would say yes, it is a resource. But I can also ask a question instead of answering you. Who are you? Who are you? How can we identify a person from who he or she is? Do we only consider a name? No. Do you consider the background only? No. Do you consider the culture? No. Then who am I? I'm a whole human being. And as a result, if multilingualism involves the language, you cannot separate the language from the culture. You cannot separate the language from who the person is. Multilingualism values other people's identities and cultures. It is a process that enables communication to be effective and flexible. Multilingualism is a resource because it helps one to view the world in his or her own perspective. And therefore, because of that, it enhances meaning making from our classrooms. In the era where we are now, there is no one who cannot agree that the world is a global world. I can be able to communicate with someone or interact with someone from another area or from another place from where I am. As a result, multilingualism in our institutions allow that the possibilities to grasp the content and the relations among the various or diverse students that we have. It is a resource because it allows excessive participation during the classes. Even if there is a monolingual target language, the use of other of the students' languages make them feel at home. It makes them understand that they belong, as Professor said, they belong to the institution. Diversity is everything that makes people different in different ways. But what is important in diversity is to appreciate different perspectives and draw from all these different resources that we have. Multilingualism improves critical thinking skills and encourages confidence in our institutions. If someone is confident with whatever she or he is saying, it becomes easy for the person to elaborate, to interact, even to engage in whatever is happening in the classroom. As a result of that, I should say multilingualism is a great resource that makes our students feel that they belong to the institutions and they are valued as who they are. And as a result, they will perform very well.
Thank you so much. A round of applause to Dr. Sefoto. Dr. Sefotu says, indeed, multilingualism is a great resource. Not just a resource, but a great resource. And Ms. Mbolekwa Sonakile, as I said, how can multilingualism be used as a resource? Dr. Sefotu says, yes, it's a resource. But my question now is, how can multilingualism, tongue twister there, multilingualism, be used as a resource for inclusion in institutions of higher learning? The how part is very important.
Thank you very much. Greetings to everyone. I'm from Pensalp. And Pensalp is the one that is the watchdog of the languages in South Africa and the provinces. Pensalp has to make sure that the inequalities of the past to the indigenous South African languages are redressed. So, how can multilingualism be used? Inclusion means that all the students, all the learning people must be accepted, not for a one-size-fits-all education that involves those languages that were embraced in the past. So, if now multilingualism has to be a resource for inclusive education, it means that our institutions of learning must have the ongoing dialogues. They must hear what is happening on the ground, because languages are evolving. They are not stagnant. We say languages are our identities. They are who we are. And therefore, we are also growing, and we experience changes in our lives. Therefore, our languages cannot rely on the methods of the past.
Sure.
The institutions must also take care of the language policies. They must be reviewed ongoing, continuously, to make sure that they address the current situations of the communities that they serve as the institutions of learning. Also, they must address and engage in researches or enable the researches that are touching the barriers that prevent educational institutions from including languaging multilingual students in classroom of current times. They must touch on those barriers. Multilingualism does not bring a change to the learners or the education consumers. It also taps deeply to what already exists. Because when the people come for education, there is something that exists in them, in their languages, in their different languages, that they interact in the societies. So the learning must come from that point of departure. Let me pause. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A round of applause to Ms. Mbolekwa. language policies should be reviewed over and over. I love that. I love that. And she says, it should be an ongoing process. Multilingualism is an ongoing process. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but it is informed by research. It is informed by different things to make sure that we give effect to multilingualism that is real, that addresses reality, not only on paper, but in real life situations, and especially real lived experiences of the students. And Prof. Langa, I just want to ask this important question that I always get when I go to students to just talk to them about language policy. How can multilingualism be used as an effective tool, not just a tool, but an effective tool for academic development in institutions of higher learning?
Again, thank you very much, Dr. Kia. I think earlier I alluded to the fact that there is this apprehension that introducing African languages were hitherto precluded from the academy into the academy brings this fear of dumbing down epistemologies, dumbing down knowledge. So there has to be a method in introducing African languages to the academy. And one big disclaimer is to understand that multilingualism is not mutually exclusive. So by bringing African languages to the academy, it is not to the exclusion of any other language. So when you bring in Setswana and Sesotho, you're not saying take out Afrikaans or English or any one of those. You are actually enriching the academy. You are affirming the languages that inform the demographics of that particular university. So it must affirm. It mustn't be seen to be threatening any other linguistic varieties or language or speech communities. So what we also need to acknowledge is that because African languages were precluded from being part of the education system, part of the academy, they do not have certain vocabularies that can articulate science well. We must acknowledge that. It's not because of their lack of complexities. No, they are as complex as any other language in the world. It's because they were not allowed to be functioning in those spaces. So we need to say, if we want to bring in these languages for the purposes of teaching and learning, research, innovation, science, technology, they have to have the capacity to express those nuanced fields. And that means you have to allow them to evolve in the academy and develop the necessary terminology to articulate that which they are actually facing. And non-language, I mean, English is evolving every day. They didn't have social distancing as a word, as a phrase before COVID. So now we know you can put those two together to actually explain a specific particular phenomenon. You know, and now it's in the Oxford English Dictionary. It's not because English is poor. It wasn't poor for the lack of that word. So African languages are not poorer for lacking certain terminologies. They need those terminologies to articulate that particular science. And so terminology development is a very important exercise in actually developing African languages, in the process of intellectualizing them. So you need that. And again, because, so that's a linguistic infrastructure that you need to put in place for African languages to be said to be effectively used in the academy. They also need to evolve, like the good doctor here was saying. You know, you need to let students use these languages to articulate science, to articulate whatever it is that they're talking about in their languages, in the process of translanguaging. They negotiate these things. Students, they don't need a lecturer to preside over them. When they leave the classroom, they start breaking down the science on their own. If it's anatomy, they start talking about anatomy in isiZulu, or between isiZulu and Setswana if they are bilingual students. So already they are beginning to navigate the science. But in the process, they are articulating those specialized terms. They are introducing them. You know, you only need to just monitor through what we call corpora, that data, you know, and see how the corpus demonstrate the introduction of these very newest terms. So again, you need a corpus infrastructure of that language, so that you can actually scientifically attest to the fact that, oh yeah, now we do have an introduction of this. I mean, the English can actually tell you in the history of the development of the language that we started swearing in this particular period, because they have corpora to monitor that language. We can't, I don't know, we should actually do that maybe, because now we are very, okay, I'm not going to go there. So you need a corpus infrastructure of a language, so that you can actually scientifically monitor these things. Yeah. You also need, unfortunately nowadays, a digital infrastructure. And you do have a whole research infrastructure in the country where I come from, where I work, the South African Center for Digital Language Resources, SADILA, that is actually developing digital resources, human language technologies, for all the 11 official languages in the country. You need the digital infrastructure because it supports the use of that language. For instance, you need your spelling checkers, you need your grammar checkers. You know, those are the necessary affordances that you need for a language to function as a scientific language. And that's not something that can be done. So there's nothing that stops African languages from being full-fledged languages of science, technology, innovation, etc., etc. Thanks.
Round of applause for Prof. Langa. There's nothing that's stopping African languages from being fully fledged languages of academia. There's nothing stopping them. And it brings an interesting insight that I've been looking at in my area of specialization, where I ask a question, Dr. Yafela, and I always ask this question, and I get different views when I ask this question, that how is multilingualism beneficial in educational development? Remember, we've touched it in institutional development. Now we're talking about how is it beneficial in educational development, especially in institutions of higher learning, educational development. How is multilingual beneficial, Dr. Yafela?
I think I will begin by saying higher education, universities are all about learning, about education. And therefore, and education and learning is a meaning-making project. And so we have to tap into resources that allow us to negotiate meanings. And so perhaps when you ask this and you get different, responses, it may be due to the fact that maybe how we view multilingualism may be, different from one person to another. Other people view multilingualism as, languages running parallel to each other, like silos, and, and in a way they're in some form of a competition. But my view, and the view that others, like maybe Prof. Makalela, and other translingual scholars take, is that languages work together. If you look at yourself right now, you don't have one language. There are many languages. English maybe is part of it. Afrikaans is part of it, perhaps. Maybe Setswana, maybe 4 languages working together somehow in your mind. And so what we translanguagers think is that, like what Makalela says, that, he has got this concept of Ubuntu translanguaging, which says that languages work together. Just like, Ubuntu, you are incomplete without me, without the other. So meaning is incomplete without using all the languages that are at your disposal. And so, in terms of educational development, I think we must allow our students to bring all the languages that they have at their disposal, all the languages, all of them, and use them all in this meaning-making enterprise, which is education. And if we do that, then I'm sure we'll be assured of, academic success and achievement, as has been proven in several empirical studies that have been done so far.
Thank you so much. A round of applause to Dr. Sefoto. Indeed, languages work together, until we come to face that reality. And we accept that reality, that languages work together. And it brings to my mind a critical question that comes to my mind, that, okay, languages work together, and we know multilingualism is a resource. Then, Dr. Sefoto, what are the most critical priority areas that institutions of higher learning should consider in ensuring that multilingualism is a reality? What are the critical areas that institutions need to consider to ensure that it's a reality, not just on policy, not just on paper, but it's a real lived experience?
Thank you so much, Doc. What we need to do as institutions, I think the first starting point would be do away with the fear of change. Because we are in a situation where, as institutions, are fearing that when we talk multilingualism, we are doing away with English. Our students will not be able to be fluent in English. So we need to do away with that fear of change and accept multilingualism as a reality. Look into the situation that we have people from different cultures and from different languages. We should also foster positive attitudes towards multilingualism. Embrace who we are and value other people's languages. The other area that we need to look at is to promote students' ability to draw from their linguistic knowledge or resources, not to undermine their languages or to merge their languages or even to wear their languages with English or Afrikaans or any other language that has been used as the medium of instruction, but be able to see the importance of using your own language in order to be able to grasp or even to reach the target language. At our universities also, another area is to create interactive environments where we use these different languages so that at the end of the day, we identify and know who the students are that we have in our classrooms. By doing that, we'll be employing practices that will allow students to make use of their linguistic resources and see those languages as resources, not as something that is undermined or something that is inferior. We are now in a situation where we talk about post-colonialism, decolonizing. So we need to look at that area. How do we decolonize our curriculum in order to be able to apply multilingualism? These are some of the areas that I think we should look at in our institutions in order to promote multilingualism. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A round of applause to Dr. Sefoto. Before I open up the floor for questions, Ms. Mbolekwa, Sonakile, and Prof. Langa, I think this one, I would pose it to you. And I always say, multilingualism is a collaborative effort. Everyone needs each other. Each language needs the other. And each language should be available to assist the other language to grow. And now it brings an interesting question that always comes when I meet stakeholders or when I talk with stakeholders, that how can stakeholders such as PenSALB, SADILA, Cefala, support or collaborate with institutions of higher learning to ensure that multilingualism is used as a resource for inclusion in academic development?
On the side of PenSALB, there are policies that govern the use of languages in our institutions of learning and our communities at large. Like for example, we have Act number 12 of 2012, which is the Use of Official Languages Act. And this is made such that to provide the regulations and monitoring the use of official languages by the institutions. From the side of PenSALB, I want to emphasize the point that PenSALB, as it is working with Northwest University and even other institutions of learning around South Africa, it has a responsibility to monitor that these language policies are implemented effectively through developing the language units, through having realistic language policies. Sizawuza singu PenSALB ritlo sheba, and the communities, I would like to make you aware that if you feel that multilingualism is not effective or addressing you as the community of Northwest, you must go to PenSALB. They must go and monitor and advise the learning institutions not to deviate from the language policies. It is the duty of PenSALB. I'm glad the program director, I heard her saying that the Northwest University is using 4 languages. The Northwest language policy, it enables 5 languages in the province. It's only 1 language that she did not mention, which is isiXhosa. But I'm proud to say that as in the past, I've been engaging with Northwest University in Potch, I realized that there is isiXhosa there, especially with the student teachers. There is isiXhosa, and the assessment is in both English and isiXhosa. And the lessons also are both English and isiXhosa. Now, this makes PenSALB very happy. It shows that really multilingualism is a resource. And it is enabling the South Africans to live as who they are in reality. Thank you.
A round of applause to Mr. Mbolekwa. Prof. Langa, are you available to answer?
Thank you again, Dr. Kia. The various institutions are set up with a specific mandate, and collaboration is established according to those strengths, so that if it's NWU and SADILA are collaborating, then they leverage on the strengths of both institutions. So the South African Center for Digital Language Resources is set up to develop resources digital resources for all the official languages. And the resources are expanse. They also include human resources, human capital expertise. And there's a lot of paucity in the space of digital humanities experts, in the space of computational linguists, data scientists, etc., etc. So there is a lot of scope in the training in that regard. And we need for these experts to be working or developing resources for African languages. The second is the infrastructure itself. It is set up to develop or harness software and make it available, software that is used for teaching African languages. And for instance, there are corpus software tools that are available that can actually enable language teachers to actually teach innovatively using those software tools, and also to create their specialized corpora in the teaching and learning while they are in the classroom. And we are also available to provide those type of demonstrations to capacitate our lecturers. And this is across the country. This is not specific to NWU as our host. The center has also developed all the spelling checkers in all the 11 official languages. So I think they were made available to the Language Week celebrations. If not, we can see to it that they are available. Spelling checkers, they have already been developed. So it develops human language technology tools that can enable the use of our official languages. And there's a dictionary portal as well that you can actually use to develop any type of a dictionary in any official language. Again, and the portal has been discussed at lexicography conferences such as the AfriLex conference that we had at Stellenbosch, and again to make it known that the tool is available. And corpora in African languages as well, they are available, and some of them are annotated. So if you are a sophisticated language teacher, you can actually find a very good specialized corpus that you can use for language teaching. And there are learner corpora as well. So there are a lot of things that are available at SADILA, both in terms of human capacity and or in terms of tools that are available if we collaborate very strongly, not just with NWU, indeed with any other public university that can improve the use of African languages in the academy, in the teaching and learning, which is vitally important as well. Thank you.
A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much to my panel members. I feel like we should have this ongoing discussions. They ignite something about multilingualism as a resource that we're taking for granted, and we feel like, why should we have multilingualism? But I think today it has changed our mind. It has reshaped our patterns, our thinking patterns, that indeed multilingualism is a resource. Ladies and gentlemen, Doc, you wanted to add?
Just one quick contribution. Yes. My contribution is, so far we've seen all these good policies that come from institutions. The Constitution itself supporting multilingualism. And so there's been this, top-down kind of, from the top going down, this is what you must do. I think we must start seriously thinking about, the bottom-up approach, and, and start thinking to say, I'm a teacher. These are my students. What are your languages? What languages have you brought? Let's start doing things using our languages. So what I would like to say is just, let's do it. Let's just start doing it from the bottom.
Yes, I love that. Let's just do it. Dr. Sefutu?
Yes, ma'am. Just to add on to that, we should not wait for the corpus that Prof is talking about. We can implement multilingualism in various ways in our classrooms. What we need to do is, how do we empower our lecturers to promote multilingualism in their classrooms, what we need to do, we do not necessarily have to know all the languages of the students that we have in the classroom. We don't need to know them. It's not possible looking at diversity in the classrooms, but you should allow them to feel that they are considered in their classroom. Let them discuss, let them say what they are saying in their languages, and then someone will eventually help you understand what the other person is saying. But at the end of the day, because we are still using the target language as our output, we'll eventually use all these languages in our discussions, in our classrooms, but at the end help those students use the target language that we are still using now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love the energy. I love the energy. Dr. Sefoto says, let's not wait. Let's start. You know, it begins somewhere. And I love it because for something, if it is to be, it's up to us. I'm going to open the floor for 2 people. Questions, short questions. And to our panelists, short questions. Can I see? By a raise of hand. If we have a question, can we borrow one mic? Which mic are we using? Mic number 1. I'm going to open up for questions. And please be short, sweet, straight to the point.
Okay. Thank you so much. I just want to pose a question to Dr. Langa and Ms. Sonagile. Okay, I see the efforts that you are doing in higher institutions of higher learning, and they are being appreciated, honestly, because years back we didn't have this. But now I would like to derail you back to basic education, because now they are doing something totally different, even minimizing the languages that learners are learning. So in order for them to develop, when they get to institutions of higher learning, we call that development. What is it that you are doing to emphasize that that will happen in basic education? Because now, what we are doing now, they are not doing. So how are we going to say that it's development if we are doing what they are not doing? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other question? Did you note that? Who is it to? Prof. Langa? Yes. Okay. All right. Do we have another question? Prof, I see you want to ask, but you like... let me give it to Ms. Moshomo, and then I'll come back to you, Prof.
Thank you. I'm not sure who will take the question, but it's just one quick question. I'm assuming we accept international students in the university, and quite a few of them, because I've met quite a few in class. And I just wanted to find out, how do we regard, I don't want to say include, because, you know, we are running away from inclusion, but how do we stay in regard of the international students that we have in class? Because I hear us talking about African languages, not South African languages. So when they're in class, how do I feel at home? I understand, I know who you are, and I'm trying to understand who you are with the language that you speak being your identifier.
Thank you so much. We're noting those questions, hey? Let's go, Prof.
Thank you so much. The first is just an observation. When your goat disappears from the kraal, the neighbor, the aroma from your neighbor's kitchen becomes suspicious. I'm trying to talk about multilingualism and how these languages kind of coexist. Which one invites the others for inclusion? I think a point really that the two of you addressed. And I was quite impressed, ma'am, you're the only one of the 4 panelists who actually spoke
2-3 phrases in your language. It's Language Awareness Week, and it's not spiting anybody, but we privileged the English language here at the expense of the others.
Thank you so much. And let's get responses, short, sweet, straight to the point responses.
I will take this one of the basic education in the lower standards. Maybe you are not aware, but strides have been taken to ensure that multilingualism is key in the classrooms these days. That is why there is a pressure now for the higher learning institutions, because it has already started. It has already started. It's kicking on. Thank you very much.
Pamsoroi, ndofunga mataro mashoka akadzama stereki and handisi kutaura rurimi runotaurwa muno muSouth Africa, and I'm doing that deliberately just to show that like you were saying, you know, in our African society, you don't necessarily speak the languages that are spoken in your borders. You speak even languages that are spoken external to your borders. Nekuti, I could actually also traverse to Kiswahili and isiZulu and in Swaziland, because it's very easy for me to do that. And by the way, these languages are very, very close because they are Bantu languages. And I'm a linguist, I know that better because of their structure. So we can do that. And it's very, very empowering. And I see your point that we are profiting English to maybe the detriment of our African languages. But that's well and good, because right now it's a functional language when we're using it and they can't do anything about it. You see what I'm saying? So reverse psychology. It's a language that we have inherited and we are using it to our benefit, because it will take us longer actually to talk to each other if we were to actually focus on each of our languages. So let's abuse it. And we're not speaking it perfectly, by the way. So we don't care again about that grammar. So we are using it the way we really want to use it effectively, just so that we can traverse our conversations. So yeah, it's a very interesting situation. But let me say, to answer your question, you know, the first thing is just to open the space, affirm the person. True. You are in my classroom, you are an international student. I studied in Oslo, I did my PhD in Oslo. They gave me an opportunity to study in nwu-pukke for 6 months. 6 months as part of my PhD program. They affirmed me as an international student there. So we could do the same thing here. There is nothing that precludes us from doing that. So it's vitally important to open the space even to our international students so that they can feel they belong to the institutions that we have enrolled, because we're the ones that enroll them. We say, come over. And because we want to be international, and internationalization is a huge thing for higher education, because again, when you're producing knowledge, you're not producing it for just your locality. You want to be part of the contributors to the global knowledge economy. And we can't do that if we squeeze out international students. So that is vitally important. And you can start by just affirming that international student in the classroom. And the last point to the question on DBE. At Sadila, we have nodes. So Sadila is, I hope that people can just from here go and read more about Sadila, because I'm hoping that you can be interested in some of the things that I said. Hint, hint. So one of the nodes is a child language. It's our youngest node. We established it last year. It focuses on child language development. And one of the things that the node is going to do, which we have just challenged it to do, is to actually start affecting policy. because it's doing a lot of scientific work and evidence-based work at that, on how young kids acquire language and when they acquire language, and what this data can do to all sorts of things in the growth of a child, and including learning in those particular languages. And so we are going to start affecting policy using scientific data, because again, that's what the academy has taught us, that you don't just say we want this as like a witch, oh, a magic wand, I want this. No, you have to provide science to support that which you are demanding, and we are going to be doing that.
A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Round of applause.
Maybe just in response to a question about, including students who are maybe international or so. According to translanguaging scholars, Way comes to mind. He talks of creating translanguaging spaces within our classrooms. So maybe you can call them multilingual spaces in which students can just practice their multilingualism wherever they are. And so I think the onus is on facilitators to create those spaces which are inclusive of all the students who are, under their custodianship, I think.
All right. I think there are a couple of questions. Can you come and open this phone for me from YouTube viewers? Remember, we are live, and we have to accommodate them. The first question is that, is there any tool used at higher education to assess implementation of policies and usage in academia? Prof. Langa, I know Yusuf is doing something. You can respond to that. The second question, also Prof. Langa, is posed to you. How is SADiLaR supporting higher institutions of learning in promoting multilingualism? Two questions for you, Prof. Langa. How is SADiLaR supporting institutions of higher learning in promoting multilingualism? And to you, Ms. Mbolekwa, it says, how does PENSAB monitor the implementation of language policies in institutions of higher learning? Thank you so much.
The pen is betraying me. But anyway, yeah, just stop writing. The first one on standards, yeah, we have started benchmarking. And benchmarking requires for people to come together in a community. And so what University of South Africa has developed is what is called a USAF Community of Practice for the Teaching and Learning of African Languages, COPAL for short. And I happen to be the chair of COPAL. And the community of practice, and is drawn from all the 26 universities. And what COPAL seeks to do is not just to take best practices from each of our universities, but also to create instruments for benchmarking. Benchmarking at every level, the type of language policies that we have, how are they consistent with the new framework that was introduced by higher education and training? What are the standards for terminology development, et cetera, et cetera. So we are, as the community of practice, and now we have an enabler to do that. We are introducing benchmarking via the community of practice for the teaching and learning of African languages. So that's one way of standardizing these processes. The second is, how is SADiLaR enabling multilingualism in the sector? And you will know that we have been commissioned by, again, University of South Africa to do a language resources audit across our universities. And with that language resources audit, to see how SADiLaR, as a strategic national research infrastructure, can support the implementation of, on the one hand, the framework that has been introduced, the new framework for higher education institutions, and also to support, because again, the infrastructure support is vitally, vitally important. I mean, the universities have been functioning in silos since '94, and some universities are duplicating efforts. You find Rhodes is developing terminologies in various scientific disciplines, and UWC is doing the same. they are using the same resources coming from government via the University Capacity Development Grant to actually do the same thing in the same language. Is closer. So when you have an infrastructure such as SADILA, that can actually create a very simple multilingual terminology bank for all the universities and make it accessible, then universities don't need to waste resources duplicating efforts. So those are the two things that I think we are seen to be doing.
Thank you so much. A round of applause to Prof. Langa. Ms. Mbolekwa, over to you. How is PenSALB monitoring the implementation of language policies in institutions of higher learning?
I-community ingabona ngathi PenSALB itsotsi. Because most of the time we monitor through making friendships with the institutions. When we collaborate with them as a team in making sure that things are happening, that's a relationship that is very strong. And you monitor silently, as I am also doing now, because I'm here. And then after monitoring, we write reports that serve as the advisory tools which can be used and also can be taken up to the MEC, who is responsible for the languages in the country. So PenSALB ikona gonke, ikona iyahahaba, isoloke ngathi ayikho kodwa ikhona. Some days it is not active. They sit at the back and they are just observing. That's how they do it. We are not aggressive. We create friendships, but umsebenzi uyenzeka.
Enkosi siyabulela. You wanted to add, Prof. Langa?
No, PenSALB is Secret Service. You don't see them, but they are working. They don't wear uniform. No, you're not going to see them coming. But maybe on a serious note, though, she made a very important point. They work in partnership. So when I was at UKZN, we used to have a language board, a university language board, and we made sure that there was a PenSALB representative in the board. When I went to Mpumalanga, again on the national exercise, I found that UFS in the language directorate was working with the regional manager, PenSALB regional manager. And it is those type of, and the University of Fort Hare, again, Dr. Mona is working with the regional manager. And they provide useful oversight, especially in terms of how the language policies are consistent with the national instruments. Because if they then run parallel to the national or regional policies for that matter, then you have this disjuncture, this noise that you're creating when the watchdog wants something and you are operationalizing something in parallel. So it is to our benefit as universities to actually have PenSALB as part of our monitoring and evaluation mechanisms to provide that necessary oversight.
A round of applause to our panelists. Round of applause, Dr. Sofotu.
No, I was just adding that they need not only observe, but to see that there is implementation that is taking place in the higher institutions. Because we hear all these nice stories, but the implementation is very difficult to reach to that level. So we need really to see how we can implement this.
Thank you so much. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much to our audience here at Mahiken campus. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Can we please appreciate our panel? Wow, wow, wow. Beautiful. I love that. Our panel was so relevant. They know their story. They taught us a thing or two, a couple of things. I'm taking away a couple of things. However, ladies and gentlemen, as I always say, for languages and multilingualism to be, it is up to us. And Don't sit in your corner and just complain. Do something. Asebenzeni arsebetseng. Mmoho re ka khona. And I always say, together we can. Our languages are our priority. If you are not prioritizing your languages, what are you doing with your language? And I want to add off with this. Northwest University, it all starts here. We are the trendsetters, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to implementation of multilingualism. From the Language Week, Language Directorate, the host, and Mahikeng campus, Dr. Kia Sishoka, Wanyana wa Mutswana, Tlautisemela, Khula Madisanyani, signing out. Have a beautiful day. Join us tomorrow for a language fest. Please RSVP, ladies and gentlemen. We are closing it off and we are saying it all starts here. Tsohle disimula mona. Tsohle disimulula fano. Re a leboga. Zonke ziqala pha. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You've been a beautiful audience. Wow. Thank you.